blown. I lived near Toronto, and that's it's a decently large city in itself, but nothing compares to New York City. I think that's the moment for me when I realized, like, whoa, dude, this is a big world out there.
So, like, if the childhood was kind of picturesque in the sense that it was something you could explore safely and you had a bit of freedom, what was it when you got to high school? What was that career path that you thought for yourself? Or were you kind of focused on your personal interests like sport, etc.?
Yeah, I was never like too much into sports, but during high school, I was like big into computers, and ever since I was young, I was actually really big into like art and drawing. I was always really encouraged by my parents to kind of pursue that. And actually, from a career perspective, I was planning on going into computer science, but I just really never had the best math grades. So I decided, okay, I'm going to take this passion for art that I have and turn it into something that is going to be profitable to me. And that's what sort of led me into like my design career. And so then I went to OCAD University in Toronto. It's actually Canada's top design school. And I felt so proud being able to get in there. It's a pretty difficult program to get into. And ever since then, I've just been like grinding pretty hard on design. And then as a designer, naturally, you sort of rub shoulders with marketers. And then I got more interested in marketing. And like, that's really the application of design. You know, design on its own is more like art. You know, it makes interesting visuals. That's my perspective anyway. But then when you want to make it practical, you have to connect with marketers, or you have to know marketing yourself. And that's when at my most biggest position, I was doing the most marketing. I was creating campaigns for like national scale advertisements across Canada.
Yeah. With your parents' desire for you to take on the artistic, this is a really interesting theme personally. Is all three of our first team members we're getting to know all had a really creative start to that sculpted their professional direction. Was your parents, are they artistic? What's their backgrounds? Do you mind me asking?
Yeah, no, not at all. I don't mind. They're not really artistic at all. They were just encouraging of me because I had an interest. My dad is a police officer, and my mom was working as a bartender for the longest time. But no, they're just encouraging of me because that was my passion.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I feel that's something interesting, and I'd be really intrigued to see not that we're going to spend any time on it now, but I'd be really intrigued to see if our future interviews also have that common thread around.
Yeah, and I think that's a fascinating point you bring up. Actually, that's a connection I didn't even really notice myself. But I wonder if you have to be sort of a creative sort of person to be embracing this new like world that's emerging in Web3. I wonder if that gives you the ability to be flexible with your thinking almost.
Yeah, correct. That's exactly what I was going to ask you. Do you feel like I guess computer science is quite a technical field. Do you feel like having that first desire, love, interest in design may have influenced that foundation to be a little bit fearless in the directions that you're looking to change or grow in? Do you feel like that's where a kind of fearlessness came from?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially as a designer and going to the university that I went to, they were big on critique, and they were not shy about it. Like, they would rip your stuff down off the wall. And so I had to get pretty good at being flexible.
Savage.
Yeah, I know. People cried. I had to get very flexible, and not take it personally. And I think that also allowed me as an individual, as like a person, to be more flexible with myself and my like personal changes. Like, okay, I need to do this, and I like break the molds. Like I used to think that you could either be creative or you could be like technical, but actually I think you can easily be both. And I think that's sort of how my university education and my like creative background helps me just be flexible that way.
I find that so interesting. How did you cross over then? So if your path started out in design, what happened after that, after university? Was it still kind of on that pathway, and then there was an intersection that you got to and you had to challenge yourself to choose your next direction?
For me, it actually just kind of worked out naturally. It was like sort of a natural progression this whole time. So like my first couple of like design jobs were very purely design, and then I I slowly started getting more into like the marketing thing. And then in the background, I've always been interested in computers, like as an individual, especially because I do my design work on computers. And my family, growing up was always asking me for like tech help.
Yeah.
That way, I didn't even know, but I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll help you, and I'll just learn. And so slowly these things all sort of started knitting together. And then as I was, growing up in my career, I was getting more interested in finance because I was learning about the concept of retirement. And like, your early jobs, I find as a person, aren't the most glamorous. They really work you hard for not much recognition. In my experience. And then I was like daydreaming of retirement, and I was like, okay, well, how do you do this? How do you actually stop working eventually? And that's where like the more finance stuff came in. So it's like all of these things slowly knitting together over time: the design, the creativity, the computers, the finance interest, and then bang, like I discovered Bitcoin. And that's really like my first like foray into this space.
Yeah. So that's really interesting in the sense that you were starting to thrive on the concept of getting to retirement and you're getting to a place where you could retire. Were your peers around you on that path as well, that interest path around how do we get to retirement sooner? Or was that just a you thing?
Pretty much just a me thing, which kind of surprised me once I started getting into it because I was so passionate about it. I was like, oh my goodness, everybody, like, we can retire, everybody. And everyone was just sort of like, no, thank you. I'd rather just like, continue along the path I'm already on, and I'll think about that later. And I was like, no, you need to think about it now. There's a thing called compound interest, guys. And they were just like, nah. So pretty much just a me thing. And then with my partner, I got her into it. She's now my wife. And so now it's like a me and her thing. We're both very passionate about that concept.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Do you think coming at like from the point of view of retirement, do you also look back and wonder what that influence had on your move into the crypto space? Do you feel like that was where you saw the most potential?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I started looking into finance and investing and stuff like that. And at the time, it was all very like classical advice, like, oh, invest in like, index funds and like save your money and all of that. And that's a great foundation. But I started doing that and I was like, wow, this is really going nowhere fast. I need to find something that's going to grow more so I can retire sooner. And because of my interest in like computers, I was rubbing shoulders with people who were like talking about Bitcoin and stuff like that. And, at the time, and maybe even still now, like there's still a lot of skeptics out there, a lot of people who don't believe in it or like don't know what it is. But I decided, okay, you know what, I'm going to look into this thing and you know what, I'll just throw in a couple hundred and see what happens. And this was 2019. So it was like right at the start of the next bull market, and it really started going up like crazy. And then I was like, wow, okay, I really need to be getting into this.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, guys, for anyone listening, this is not financial advice, but I think what you can hear is that we're already starting to sense people are making choices and being curious and really potentially the path that they were on, they're finding a left-hand turn or they're turning it into a right-hand turn. And it kind of sounds like this was your right-hand turn into what led you on to OSIS. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, once I got into Bitcoin, like the world exploded. I got into like, down the path through other things. And then it's funny, I've actually known Jalal and Chris for a long time now. And when they were first starting OSIS, I was interested. And so I decided to get involved. And then I've been following along for a long time. And because of my, interest in Bitcoin and crypto, that's what led me here. That's what enabled me to get here, because otherwise I wouldn't have even known about all of this.
Good word, enabled. When Jalal and Chris shared their vision with you, in your space, what did you hear that made absolute sense and had absolute golden ticket written on it?
Well, to me, the golden ticket aspect is like, the team. Like Jalal and Chris are fantastic, and like every time I hear them talk, I'm just like, wow, dude, how are you guys so amazing at talking? And then beyond that, the actual like technology of tokenization, like the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, this is crazy. There's this concept that one of these popular Bitcoin people talk about. They're like, oh, well, you wouldn't buy a coffee with your with your apartment building, with a fraction of your apartment building on Madison Square Avenue. And I'm like, well, why not? Like, you could with tokens.
Yeah.
Everything becomes so much more liquid. You could, like, the finance opens up so much more.
Yeah, look, why don't we stay on this topic for a minute? Because I, as a community member, am a huge advocate for education and being open about where you are on that spectrum of learning. And it should never be a shame point for anyone listening, either today or 6 months from now, 12 months from now, wherever you enter this listening conversation or our community. Never be ashamed of where you're at in terms of learning. And I think tokenization and what that actually means for people in a really tangible way can be quite challenging to take on board. And I think if you're a later learner or you're an interrupted learner or you've never been in the tech space, you might be intimidated out of it. And I don't think you should be. I think you should be confident in the fact that it's going to click at some space, sometime, and in some way that is meaningful for you. And talk to me a bit about tokenization. If you wanted to communicate tokenization to someone, what would you tell them? And it could be from a finance background in the sense that look at it this way, or it could be a design space and a fractional, a smart contract somehow.
Sure.
Talk to us about that for a minute, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Well, first I want to echo your message. Absolutely. I mean, never be afraid to acknowledge that we don't know everything. I think that's absolutely a fact. And I think also about tokenization, we also don't know what the future is going to look like. Like, it could be so much more than we even currently understand, even the most knowledgeable people. I think that's a real important thing to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, correct.
My impression of tokenization, I always think about it from the sort of like fractionalization aspect and tokenizing like real world things, allowing people to have access to areas of finance never before available to them. So like, let's say real estate, for example, if you could have a tokenized house, I mean, it enables people to get into that much more easily than if it wasn't.
So it kind of feels like trends for me in my learning. Last week it was real world assets. This week I'm looking at the smart contracts, and I'm actually looking at the and this is the thing, be confident enough to say what you can remember so that other people can join you in your conversation where you're at. So I was looking at the smart contracts like that. Is it the EVN 721 and the EC11? I'm not too sure. I can't remember the actual names, but I was looking at that, and I'm starting to learn the smart contract side of it and what that, like, tokenization is such a big, chunky picture. And I think it really is understanding how it works for us and what that actually looks like. So it's really interesting to hear your input as well and how you think it has got legs. Obviously, it's got legs and it's going to keep going on. And I think I love that point where you said we don't actually know what it's going to look like. Like, this is just the start of mass adoption. So what does mass adoption look like?
Yeah, exactly.
12 months from now, like, that's still wide open.
Let's say tokenization now is where Bitcoin was X number of years ago. People didn't know that Bitcoin could be doing what it's doing, right? These are like new inventions that open up. The more people get involved, the more minds you have knitting together, and then the more like innovation comes out of that.
Yeah. And I think too, something else I thought about today, which is something I'm going to do tomorrow, is I'm going to drop into Google Docs and Google research, and I'm going to go and look for use cases, tokenization use cases, and start reading those. So then I can try and put those pieces together. Now, I think this is probably a really good point to talk about your space in OSIS and how you see this all coming together at this point in terms of your marketing direction or your fit in the team. What's your thoughts on that one?
Like how we're going to be able to use marketing to get this in front of more people's eyes? Is that what you're wondering about? Yeah,
and kind of really leverage the products, and essentially, OSIS is something that enterprise can use and individual people can use. It's really created the space to take the technicality out of it. So for us now, it's just about how we get people to understand that it's really something you can do at either end of the spectrum.
Totally. Well, there's a couple of different angles that I like to approach this particular marketing strategy from. The first angle is education, so making people aware of what we're actually doing and what we're actually building. So making them aware of all the various things in our roadmap. That's the first thing. And then tied into that is also making them aware of what even like is tokenization, what is Web3. That's sort of like a foundational understanding that we need to get across to more people who aren't in this industry currently, right? That'll broaden the scope of people that are able to join us here. And then once people are aware of like who we are, what we're doing, and the foundational elements that they need to understand, that'll allow them to get involved much more easily. So that's sort of like the more technical marketing approach. And then another area you can approach this from is being like entertaining, you know? And so like we've got a current marketing program running right now. We're running a meme contest where we're encouraging them to create memes about OSIS for OSIS so that our message can spread that way. You know, people will be scrolling and they'll see this like meme, which is basically like a visual package of an idea, and it'll kind of like stick in their head. They're like, oh man, that's funny, or that's true. And if it is funny and true, it might implore them to look into us more.
Yeah.
And so kind of always been a really good feedback loop between the two things, right? Like there's the education and then there's the entertainment piece. Like those two things sort of cycle back around and around. The entertainment leads to the education. The education leads to people being more entertained and spreading that information around.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I feel, what's your most, if you're looking at this plan personally, what is the one? It's all really important, but what's the one aspect that you really want to make clear and have as coherent and as cohesive a connection to the products for OSIS as you can? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like which part of the marketing plan do I think is most important? And I do think it's the education about what we're actually building, you know, the actual product itself. If people understand that, then and if we make that path, that funnel, the most easy to digest, then that's the most important thing. Because someone could come across us from anywhere, and if we don't have like a smooth way for them to understand what we're doing, they're going to be like, what is this? I'm confused. And then they might go away.
If you had to make something, if your instincts, because I feel like, you know, I think people don't, well, actually, no, that wouldn't be a true statement to start with. Instincts are really important in the sense that if you are really confident in your skill set, obviously people have looked at your skill set and said, yeah, you have great capacity. We like your personality. You've got good values. You line up. You're passionate about the product. Then when you're in the role, if you're thinking about your instincts, which area and how are you wanting to make something clearer? What is your sticky point? If you're looking at it, the bigger picture, what's the sticky point and how are you feeling you want to break it down? Does that make sense?
Sure. Well, I think actually so far we've done a really good job, from a website perspective, with Vanessa's creation. And the roadmap and all that. I think we've done a fantastic job there. When people go there, it's such a clear journey. There's our roadmap and our white paper. So I don't think there's a ton of sticking point there. I think really what we need to do now is continue to develop along that roadmap and make people aware of what we are doing. So, make people aware of when new technology, new innovations are available along that path, and get the message out that way. Because then once they hear about it, they check out our website. It's very clear, I think. I've even asked around. I've done a couple of case studies trying to investigate that sort of thing, that actual particular question. Are there any sticking points along the journey? And no, I think we've done a really good job with that one in particular. I think the more sticking points would be from a larger perspective. What is tokenization and what is Web3 going to enable in the future? That's to get people's imaginations going, I think is going to be a real focus there.
As you're brainstorming around that tokenization crossover communication, what's your vision for that?
Like, how do I envision communicating what tokenization is?
Yeah, in a way that really respects people's intellect.
Yeah.
And it allows them to feel they've got reason to be in this space.
Totally. I mean, I'm coming from a very visual background, so I always think in terms of visualization. And actually, I'm really interested in like AI image generation as well. I do some of that. And so what I often will do is utilize those softwares to kind of explore what tokenization can look like visually. And so a lot of the time it comes across as like that fractionalized assets piece that we were talking about. But I want to keep pushing it to see how else we can represent that visually. Because I feel like that also ties into the meme aspect. It's like this little package of information that people can kind of digest with their eyes.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And I feel like whilst we might not, I feel like this is still a personal conversation because I feel like you're able to tell us how you think and feel about the professional lens that you need to work through. But I often wonder, would you say that marketing in itself, you need to be passionate about what you're trying to cross over in terms of communication?
Oh, definitely. I mean, for me particularly, I think that's definitely the truth. I'm a person who very much values like authenticity and being real and staying in alignment with my values. I think there are people out there who could do marketing for things they don't agree with, but that's not me as a person. Like, I need to be passionate about something, and I'm really passionate about OSIS. Like, I wake up at 4 a.m. I'm like, let's go. Like, let's start sending some emails. Let's start putting together some stuff. And so for me, that's the real sauce, the real juice that enables me to like get into this and like really do my like best work.
We've got a technical difficulty, ladies and gentlemen. Twitter Spaces has bugged out on us, and we will be back on in a moment. Oh my goodness. For waiting room music, that beat goes pretty hard. How's everybody
Yeah.
doing?
Doing great now that we're back. I love that waiting room music. It's very nice.
I
Yeah,
know.
we had a little intermission, and Twitter Space is bugging out again, but we are back like we never left.
Yeah. Thank you for your patience, guys. Now, Justin, I hope your memory is better than mine. Where were we up to?
So we were talking about my role as the CMO and how passion sort of enables me to be more effective in this position. And
Yes.
that's because I am very passionate about this project and this team, you know.
Yeah,
I think there are people out there who can do marketing about things they're not passionate about, but I'm not really one of them.
Correct. Now, that was also something I feel like Vanessa touched on with her design journey as well. And that reminds, so whenever I have gone down a path, when it begins to feel uncomfortable, I realize I'm not congruent with the values and the vision of whichever project that I'm working on, be it an organization. So from my space as a youth worker or community worker, if I'm not comfortable with the vision or the operations of the service, then I can't progress any further, because I really need to feel a sense of intuition with what I'm doing, using my skills and my practices in that way. And I think marketing, in the sense that you have to be able to reach people, you have to be able to touch them in a way that they feel respected as well. We were going to kind of touch on how you were going to feel out tokenization and making it the real tangible sense that everyone can pick up and run with. Did you have thoughts already about that, or it's still just a work in motion for you?
Well, I think everything for me is always going to be a work in progress, which is sort of one of the particular ways that I work. Like, I don't think anything's ever done, whether it's a design or whether it's a marketing strategy, anything like that. I think there's
Good
always
point.
room for improvement. But the main approach that I'm taking right now is with aspect to communicating tokenization to people is going to be through like the visual sense primarily, as well as, you know, the written word and through education. But I'm trying to create like visual memes for people to understand tokenization through that lens, and create like shareable little pieces of information that people can spread around and get excited about.
Yeah, well, that works into the sense that we want to cross over into many different languages as well. And I think if you think about these, like 3 or 4, well, I mean, everyone has their own learning style, but if if visual learning is something that can cross over many cultures, many languages, you just have to find that piece in different cultures that fits the message you're trying to project, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And actually that ties in interestingly to my thesis that I did in design school. I created a project that was trying to explore what is the reason that creativity was created, like from like a nature perspective, like why did creativity evolve? And I created a visual video that didn't have any text to it. So that my idea was that anyone from anywhere could watch it and get something out of it and like have their mind be sparked.
Ooh.
And sort of
Tell us about that, please, if you don't mind.
Pardon me?
Tell us a bit more about that, please, if you don't mind. Because I feel like that might be one of the things that you could expand on and use in this space.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I've got a background with like some video editing, and, you know, I'm sure there could be a lot of interesting stuff in that aspect going forward. But yeah, I mean, basically the idea was to explore, you know, the role of creativity and why did nature evolve this thing that seemingly like extra effort on top of just like survival, right? Like you could just every day just go out and just like do the same thing and you survive. You know, maybe that's what you could do. But I came to realize that creativity enables you to survive in an ever-changing world, right? And that's like the source of all innovation. Is you have to be creative. You have to look at things from an outside of the box perspective, and that's what enables people to grow and enables amazing projects like this. Is the creative force, and that's my philosophy around like communication, is to try and reach as many people as possible. So whenever possible, I like to do things that are visual without text.
So interesting. I had never thought of it like that. And now that you say that, just kind of feels like, yeah, that. Sorry, I'm just having an aha moment.
That's fantastic. I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, and I feel like so I think you could be in potentially, and this is the other thing about the launch pad. All you need is an internet connection, and if you sensed out a visual kind of representation, you could probably almost suggest 80% of the world would understand what, you know, a famous brand of shoes is. They would all.
Yes.
I mean, you could.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of like facial expressions, let's say, everybody knows what a smile is. You know, you don't need to speak the same language to understand that visual cue, right? Various emotions expressed by the face alone. Before humans invented language, that's how we communicated. You know, we didn't have words, we only had visuals. And so it touches into a deeper part of the mind, I think, that crosses all kinds of like cultural barriers or any sort of other barriers that might be in place. And actually, while you were just talking, you said something that made me like spark a little idea. And it was like the intersection between like the creativity of the individuals of the planet plus tokenization. It's just like, wow, like this can go like anywhere. Like who even knows what people are going to come up with, you know?
100%.
Because we created this open platform for anybody with an internet connection. Like that's what really blows my mind.
100%. And at the very early stages of my career, I would be working with young people that were very creative. Their type of creativity might involve what a lot of people would consider illegal activity, but you know, a young person creating something that might be, you know, not really a mainstream activity, but they don't have the resources to get out of the space that they're in. They're kind of struggling, and they're just reaching for the resources they have, and in many cases, they're geniuses of their own skill set. But give that young person the capacity to leverage those thought pathways that they have. They've got capacity to be, on the flip side, an engineer of whatever they're doing in their own personal decision making. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Like I think young people, we need to give them a little bit of slack to kind of explore their environment and really like test the boundaries of things. You know, as young people, it's like that's the only way you really learn. Like actually, I recently became a father, and I've got a 9-month-old.
Oh, congrats.
And it's been one of the most amazing parts of my life is getting to watch her grow up and learn. And, you know, she'll try and like reach for something and then she'll fall down and then she'll cry. But like, that's part of life. You have to kind of push the boundaries on your capabilities in order to really learn and grow. So absolutely.
Yeah. Hey guys, I just want to mention, please start thinking about any questions you might have for Justin. Even if it's a left field, I feel like it's going to be totally fine to invite questions like that. And I just wanted to drop back into that. It's say 3 years from now, when people see our OSIS design, they see the A, they see the circle around it. What do you want them, if you could project ahead, what would you wish for them to know when they see that image or feel when they see that image?
I mean, ideally, it would be as iconic as the Nike logo. For me, when I look at it, I see like a shape that's creating like almost like a blast ring, but like a blast ring of like a fantastic idea that's going to propagate out from this point, this project, outwards across the whole planet, and hopefully envelop it and enable people to just like change their own lives with it. So I hope it becomes something that's that recognizable, that well known. That would be amazing.
Yeah. If you could imagine our first, I say ours because it is ours, but obviously the genius is because it's been brought to us by Chris and Jalal and the whole team working with them. But if you could imagine or desire for our first most viral launchpad use case, what would you want that to be in the vicinity of, or what would you want to imagine that being?
Sure. Well, I think there's two different ideas that I think are going to be the most like immediately viral once they pick up, and it's either going to be something that is like a tangible thing in the real world, or it's going to be like an idea. Like for example, I actually tokenized the idea of the future, and so my concept behind that was I wanted people to like trade this coin based on how they feel about the future. If they're positive about it, buy. If they're not feeling positive about it, sell. Like it'd be sort of like this indicator, this chart that maps out people's feeling around the concept of the future. And I think there's a really interesting use case there, right? Like for people to use the tokenizer for, or tokenization in general.
Oh, definitely, like a temperature gauge for how people are feeling.
Exactly, like for their optimism, or you know what, there could be people who are on the other end of it. They're like, oh, people aren't very optimistic right now. Well, that's where I'm going to come in, and then they like buy, or they like, innovate. Let's say,
That's so interesting. I hadn't, But and then I think this is the other side of it too. Like in my mind, that makes absolute sense. Like everyone has something to sense or feel or suggest about the current climate. I guess it's a social and emotional decision maker. I personally don't try. I personally try not to watch the news. I try to go and seek out my own information.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good idea because I actually have background in the news as well. I was working for a news company in Toronto for a while as a designer for them and a marketer for them. And I mean, I really think it's a smart choice to create your own understanding of what's going on in the world rather than allowing someone else to do it for you.
Oh yeah, I think it changes the temperature of the lens too. I think sometimes it can instill quite a lot of fear, and it shuts down those. But yeah, I'm not sure. Like that's just my take on it, and we've got to remember everyone's different. So it's not a negative if you are, it's not a negative. It's just a personal choice. Then I think.
Yeah, everyone's got their own path for how they want to interact with the world. For me, I'm a big believer in like your mindset makes your reality. Like I always try and recognize how lucky I am and how much good things I have going for me, especially being like fortunate enough to be in the area of the world I am, or whatever, anything like that. I always just try and think about how things are good. I always try and focus on that instead of, oh, things are so bad, things are going wrong, blah, blah, blah. No, I try and focus on the positive.
Yeah. And I think too, you've got to know yourself as well. And this is something else about the launch pad that's going to be part of when people start to adopt and run with it, is that you've got to know yourself. And I'm probably one of those empathetic people that if I watch the news, I feel fear and I feel distress and I feel a sense of where are we going to go from here. And I don't think that is a whole summary of humanity's desire to be good for each other.
Yeah, well, I mean, the news has a particular focus, right? They're focused on here are the things that are happening generally that are not great. That's just their mandate, I guess. And so for me, I like to focus on the things that are great. So I like to look at the various amazing innovations that are happening around the world and all of the positive stories, those like feel-good stories about humanity, because that's inspiring. When I see that, I feel uplifted and I want to go out and I want to create good things. When I see the opposite of that, I feel, oh my goodness, why even bother? And so I think it's better just for me to focus on the optimistic thing. But anybody could look into whatever they like. If you like to know about that other area of things, maybe that motivates you differently to get out there and solve those problems.
Oh, definitely. It's just... it's how you use the emotion, I think. And it's super interesting when I think about the Launchpad and Tokenizer. I think to myself, there's only positivity in that space, in the sense that creativity is boundless. Yeah. People's capacity to attach to it and want to use it in their communities or on a wider scale, there's only positivity there. And I think we're really just waiting for that tipping point past, again, the regulatory framework where utility-less projects are falling over and people understand what utility actually is. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just, is that something that you really want to focus on, really communicating the utility across the product?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I really want to empower people to use it for whatever they decide they want to use it for. Like, I believe in that sort of openness, because I don't know what everybody's going to come along in an event, obviously, right? Like, I couldn't possibly know that. So if I just simply make it so that everybody can use it however they want to, then, and educate them on that aspect, I think that's far better use of my time than trying to tell them, okay, you can do, these 100 specific things. It's like, no, you can do anything. Like, go and do anything you want. And I think you touched on a really good point as well, that it's really just a positive thing. You can only be creative and positive. There's nothing like destructive that I can see coming out of this.
Yeah. And I think that's potentially the essence of our community as well. I think when I'm in and around our community as well, all I sense is optimism and a focus on the future. That is a way to take back some type of the power, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And that's, another key aspect as to why I'm so passionate about this. Taking back the power into the hands of the individual. Like, it's that whole concept of decentralization. And that's actually how nature works as well. The individuals, they're born, they go and they try to survive and make sense of this world. And then they change, and slowly, like, evolution happens, and they fit into a niche that makes sense for them, and then they thrive and all of that sort of thing.
I had never thought of it like that. That's genius.
Thank you.
I can see why you're in marketing. I can. You've got a touch for the words.
Thank you. Yeah, I try and weave narratives that are interesting, inspiring, and also truthful. I think if you're building from a foundation of truth, then you can't really go wrong.
Amen.
I like that. Let's So do you want to add anything more to how you see your role evolving within OSIS in the future? Like, if you wanted to have your hand on that forward motion, where would you really want your role to be evolving?
Sure. I like to think of myself as sort of like a humble servant sort of person who can kind of take on anything. Nothing is beneath me. I think the NVIDIA CEO was saying something like that as well. Like, if he saw a little spill on the floor, he'd go grab a mop and pick it up and take care of that. So what I want to do also is any problem, any sort of like area that I can assist with, I want to just get in there and tackle that. Like, for example, my background is primarily in design and marketing, but recently I've been doing outreach, trying to attract like larger scale investors. Perfect. Let's do it. Let's get in there. Let's get on some calls. Like, that's my perspective.
And kind of being flexible inside that team space.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess probably because we're coming towards the end now, and we want to, if anyone has any questions, we really want to be able to open it up to that. But I would really like you to have time to, how would I say it, share any type of advice or lessons you've learned in the time that you've worked with OSIS that has not so much changed your view on something, but it's really reinforced for you that it's a clear and positive.
Yeah. Oh, that's a perfect question. I've got exactly the right answer for you. So like I was saying, I've been doing some like outreach and trying to contact individuals specifically, maybe trying to arrange, whether it's Twitter Spaces for us or YouTube slots. And there's this one in particular that I was kind of like reviewing, and then I was talking to Jalal about it, and I was like, hey, do you want to go on this? Like, I'm not sure. He's like, knock on every door. Like, let's get on everything. Like, I want to do everything. I'm like, wow, that's fantastic. Like, for me, I was wondering, oh, maybe, this isn't a big enough channel or blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But I think that's just a fantastic perspective to have. And that kind of like gave me a bit of a mental shift. I'm like, all right, I'm knocking on every door. Let's go.
I know, I get the sense that Chris and Jalal are so committed to the success of the vision, not so much the personal success that will come from it. Obviously, that's something that they do need to be prepared for. But I always get the sense, and when you say knock on every door, what they're actually trying to open is the possibility for everybody. And they've kind of given us products that are actually going to be useful for any sector of our communities, for any type of mind, and they really just want to get it out there to people.
Absolutely. And another thing is you don't want to write off any potential connection based on some small piece of data that you're receiving up front, right? Like, don't necessarily judge a book by its cover. Don't necessarily judge a person by their number of followers. Like, who knows where anything could go, right? Like, you know what? Shake everybody's hand, talk to everybody, and who knows who you're going to meet.
100%. One of the people I follow in a social media space has a lower number of people, but I always find their content really enriching, and I think that echoes never discount the number of followers, because really it isn't about that, it's about the speaker in the space and what they're holding. Yeah. It's how they hold their space, and when people hold their space, people naturally come into it. So I guess when Jalal's saying knock on every door, it's because you don't know who that person's holding space for. You don't know what connection that's going to explore and a flower will grow from.
Yes, and who do they know, right? So, for example, I was at a restaurant one time, and I was chatting to a fellow in the booth next to me. He looked like a very normal guy. Turns out he was a super millionaire. He won the lottery, and it's like, wow, you never would have thought unless you spoke to him. And I'm glad I did.
100%. I went to a conference once. Side piece. Went to a conference once back in my early back in the back. I went to a conference. I was studying peace and conflict studies, but my interest was post-conflict reconstruction. And we sat down at these various round tables, and I was speaking to a gentleman beside me, and he had actually been quite up high in the military in the Pacific Island, in one of the Pacific Island nations when there was a coup, and he had to work under the pseudo dictator until he could find a way to move out of that space. And I was absolutely blown away. I just sat down to have lunch, and this guy had just opened up this entire essential thesis for me on power and control. And I was just like, wow,
I know.
How did that even happen?
Oh, right.
So
and
I completely understand what you're saying. It's you always say hello to the person beside you, because you have no idea what they're going to teach you.
Absolutely. That's the beauty and the mystery of this whole existence. It's so fascinatingly complex and interesting. And the person sitting next to you on the bus, you have no idea the amazing life that they may have lived.
Yeah, I always hold it dear to me, that image of, the movie Dumber and Dumber, and they've got that dog van blasting down the road with the ears waving in the wind.
Totally.
I always try to feel like life's that vehicle. Just be curious and just kind of put on a suit that is humorous and just, keep driving forward. Just keep driving forward.
Yep, absolutely agree. Just keep driving forward. That's perfect.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a project too. That's OSIS. We're going and we're collecting the winners, and we're collecting those personalities that are part of that creativity that's required.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely true.
Now I feel like it's going to be something that is personally, OSIS is something personally important to you, but I feel like it's really professionally important to you. If you thought about OSIS in a way that matters for you now as a father, how would you communicate why OSIS matters to you?
Well, through the lens of being a dad, what I want is to create and facilitate a good world for my child. That's what's most important to me. Not so much, my whatever anymore. My ego has been reduced greatly. Now that I have a child, I'm just like, all right, everything's for you. Let's make the world the best for you. And I think OSIS really is going to create an amazing positive impact on the world. And that's a piece that further inspires me to be part of it.
I feel and it's almost like it's hard to encapsulate how far it's going to reach. And I think, again, that ties into the project matters because it's uncapped. It's unknown how far it's going to go. And I think what's going to cross over in a really powerful way in terms of that momentum and trajectory is the consistent values, the clear vision. And I always get the sense that really at the end of the day, Chris and Jalal are humanitarians, and their common gift of many in their friendship is the use of technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, absolutely. And I really agree with their vision of the future. And that's why, like, to me, OSIS is just so fantastic. That open future for everybody, really leveling the playing field. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. And look, just for everyone listening now, 3 months from now or 6 months from now, we are not a cult. We're actually we've got a really tangible product here that is going to continue to evolve in a way that's reflexive and flexible to people in their communities, people in their knowledge, people in their skill set. And part of those connections will always be knock on every door, have those conversations, and keep pushing forward. And I think that's where your role comes in really so much about communication.
Absolutely. I think you're cutting out a little bit there, but yeah, absolutely. We're definitely not a cult, and hashtag not a meme coin. Definitely a utility project that I think is just going to have an amazing, bright future, and I hope to be someone who adds to that and helps enable that future to come into existence.
Yeah, I feel like from the way you're communicating with us, that's just a given.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, as the newest team member, obviously Chris and Jalal are still on the path that makes most sense to them, because it definitely makes sense to me as to why you're in that spot that you are.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I definitely hope to be of supreme utility.
Supreme utility on top of the utility of OSIS. Hey, yeah. I like that. Maybe we should all aim to be supreme utility in our own right.
Absolutely. I think if you're oriented in a positive way, then if you are supremely utilitarian, then you're going to make the world better. You're going to take that positive tilt of your heart and push it out onto the world, and then the world's going to be a better place for it.
Yeah, I do feel like OSIS is a heartfelt operator.
Definitely.
Its aim is to change, and it's definitely on the path to doing that. Now, I just wanted to check in. Did anyone have anything that they wanted to tease out with Justin, even just pose a concept and allow him to try and paint it for you? Has anyone got anything they want to pass on to Justin while we're here? Coming up to the hour. Don't be shy. Perfect. Now, I feel like it's probably a really good time, whilst people are thinking, giving people an opportunity to think, what's your take home? What's your emotional take home about OSIS, and what's your professional take home about OSIS?
Well, emotionally, especially from these particular conversations that have been happening over the last couple of days, I want to take home, and I am taking home, the fact that, like, these are amazing people that we get to work beside and rub shoulders with on a daily basis. And so that's why I really appreciate this series in particular. And I think that is, only a projection of the truth of the OSIS spirit. So that's my emotional take home. And professionally, I mean, yeah, I'm just going to keep pushing, just going to keep trying to get OSIS in front of as many eyes as possible, keep knocking on every door, and keep that positive spirit flowing outwards into the world to try and make it a better place.
That's a good summary, actually. Guys, if you're looking for Justin in Discord, he is, what's your handle in Discord,
I'm
Justin?
JTK21, also known as the Wall Breaker.
Yeah, that was one of my questions for you. What's the wall breaker about?
I was waiting for that one. So the wall breaker. I mean, when OSIS like launched soon after, I remember Chris was posting in the chat saying like, "Hey, there's this like cell wall up here, guys. Like, let's get together, community. Let's go." And then I saw that and I was like, "All right, yeah, sure." And then I just like smashed Market Buy a bunch, and then just like smashed through that wall, and I was like feeling cool about myself, so I gave myself that little name and sort of stuck.
I was feeling cool about myself. I quite like that comment.
It's like I don't take it quite too seriously, but it's a little bit of fun, and I thought maybe it could inspire others to develop little names for themselves as well. Like the meme master, you're the guy who goes out on Twitter all the time, get out there and like be posting memes. Why not? Like,
I feel, and I remember seeing one of your memes that was hilarious.
Oh, thank you.
Was it the one? It kind of looked like you had crazy the frog meme in there.
Oh yeah. Oh man, I don't know. I mean, there's been so many. One that I'm most proud of. One of my memes that I really like the most actually is that bell curve one. Are you familiar with that? It's like on the left, there's like the guy who's got like a bumpy head, and he's like kind of like supposed to be like a dumb guy, and then there's like the dude in the middle who's supposed to be like a regular Joe, and then there's the guy in the hood on the right who's like all esoteric, and the dude on the left and the right are always saying basically the same thing.
I think I remember that.
It's pretty it's hard. It's so hard to explain a meme via words, but that's one of my favorite ones.
No, I can definitely see the passion around the memes as well. I do love it. Right, now, guys, just checking in a final time. Did anyone have any questions for Justin? Because we will wrap it up at the top of the hour. We're feeling confident about it.
I explained everything in my whole life, so there's no questions.
I really enjoyed this conversation, Justin. You're very articulate, and
You made it so easy for me. You made it so easy. Like it's. Thank you so much for hosting this. Talking to you is an absolute breeze and a pleasure.
No, by all means, we are lucky to have you in the spot that you're holding.
Thank you.
I think I saw Mr. Jalal dropping in, Mr. Ibrahimi.
Yes. So thank you, everybody. We're wrapping this call up. Thanks so much, Justin. Thank you so much, Rachel. Fantastic episode today.
Welcome.
We have another episode coming tomorrow, same time. And I believe this time it'll be our wonderful CTO. Everyone loves him. He's kind of a celebrity, Luigi Santoro. So I look forward to being on live with everyone tomorrow again.
Absolutely. Get hyped, everybody. It's going to be a good one.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Justin.
Thanks, everybody. It's a pleasure.
Take care, everybody.
Have a great day.